Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. And I'm recording another one of my favorite videos to record here for the channel. And of course, that is a scouting profile for a highly requested and highly beloved prospect in the 2022 NBA draft that I don't think is getting a lot of recognition or credit from some of the quote unquote draft experts out there. So we're going to cover him in today's video, break down exactly what I see from him, kind of what I think he could be in the NBA, because I think that some people are very, very high on him. Some people probably don't know who he is and more. So we're going to jump into it today. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Also leave a like on today's video if you do enjoy these videos, and comment which player you'd like to see next. The prospect we are covering today is Kai Sotto. So like in every other single scouting profile, this is what we're going to be covering. We're going to start with the player information, go through Kai Sotto's strengths, then focus on some of Kai Sotto's weaknesses. We'll give a player archetype, the expected draft range where I think he will actually go on draft night, and then the actual range that I would take him in. So without further ado, let's jump into it with the player information. Who exactly is Kai Sotto? Well, he's a 19-year-old who turns 20 on May 11th. He is 7'2". That is right. You read that correctly. 7'2", weighs 210 pounds. So he is rather light, especially for a 7'2" player. And he has a 7'5" wingspan. So again, a very lengthy, tall player, similar to Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren was our last scouting profile. Kai Sotto, I think a lot of people are going to compare him to Chet Holmgren. We're going to discuss the differences between those two players and exactly why there's such a wide spread on where these two players might go on draft night. He is from the Philippines, so I know a lot of Philippines viewers are probably watching this. Welcome to the channel. If you guys are enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe. We'd love to have you be a part of what we do here at Utility Sports. And I know how passionate you all are about Kai Sotto as well. So I recognize that, and I want to give you guys a lot of credit for how much love you do show him, even in my comment section. He did spend a year with the G League Ignite. He was not active with that team. He was a part of the startup year when the program was first introduced. So he was there with Jalen Green, did not play though for the G League Ignite. And now he actually went overseas. He plays with the Adelaide 36ers in the NBL. And you can see in his numbers there in 19 games, he's mostly coming off the bench, only 2 starts, but he's averaging 7.5 points a game nearly, about 5 rebounds a night, less than an assist a game. And you see the rest of the numbers there. Pretty good efficiency specifically, shooting over 50% from the field, 33% from 3. Now that is limited volume. He's not shooting a ton of 3-point shots, but there is a little bit of volume there. And he's shooting fairly decent from the free throw line as well. The 1.3 turnovers a game. We'll talk about that too in today's video, exactly why certain things are playing out the way that they are there for him in the NBL. But for the most part, for a young guy like him, 19 years old, those are pretty good numbers in a professional league. I've said it before with Hugo Bassan. I've said it with Ousmane Dieng. The NBL, I think, is the second best league in the world. So Kai Sotto is putting up some substantial numbers over there as a 19-year-old. We're going to talk about his potential and exactly where I think he could end up being in the NBA. Now let's start with his strengths. And the first one is clearly his size and length. At 7'2" with a 7'5" wingspan, I think the easiest way to put it is to call him a deterrent. You'll see a lot in some of these clips that I'll show that he's a deterrent to guards that are trying to attack the rim. When you see a 7'2" player down there with a 7'5" wingspan and a 9.5 foot standing reach, it might make you think twice about trying to finish at the rim with him around. If you're not going to go up strong against Kai Sotto, you might as well not go up at all, because he will take the shot out of the air. He's got good verticality, specifically against straight line drives. If he's in the lane, he's going to be tough to finish over. And I think that's really the biggest positive here from a player like Kai Sotto. We've seen it in the past from guys like Boban Marjanovic and some other, Sean Bradley. Those guys are a little bit bigger than Kai Sotto, but that type of size and length is very tough to deal with. So he's going to be a deterrent in the at the rim. And also he's going to be able to contest out on the perimeter just because of his length. He can play off quite a bit. Just put a hand up, and it's going to be tough to shoot over him just simply because of how big and tall and lengthy he is. And then likewise on the offensive end of the floor, if he gets good positioning, if he's under the rim, he's going to be an offensive rebound machine. Now, the thing is, he is fairly light, so it's not like he's the hardest guy to box out and move. And he's not the most vertically athletic player either. So you can jump with him and try and out rebound him that way. But that is, setting yourself up for failure a little bit, because if, a guy with 9.5 foot standing reach, if he can get off the floor by a foot, he's already above the rim by half a foot at that point. So again, Kai Sotto, he's definitely someone who, with his size and length, is an intriguing prospect. just simply from the eye test, because you're looking at a player that big. I mean, there is some value there in its own right, just because of how big and lengthy he is, that I think he could impact the NBA game a little bit. Moving on to one of his biggest skill set points, and that's his face-up game out of the post. That's actually one of the most surprising things for me. He's a left-handed player, and he's actually got a really nice post-up arsenal, specifically once he catches with his back to the basket, turns and faces up toward the hoop. And the one thing that really stood out to me is he's actually comfortable going to his right. In one of the clips here, you'll see him put the ball on the deck going right. Doesn't actually finish the play, but definitely is someone that, kind of reminds me of Montrezl Harrell. We know how good his face-up game is. Now, I don't think he's nearly as quick or as explosive as Montrezl Harrell, but not a lot of players utilize the face-up game as a driver, and Kai Sotto is definitely comfortable doing so. And you actually see part of why this is so successful for him. In that first clip, he got someone to bite on an ump fake, and then able to put the ball on the deck. Part of the reason why is because that's a progression play for him. Earlier in the game or at other points in the game, on film and everything, you'll see certain points where he's just able to turn around, knock down a jump shot. And with his size and height and where he releases the ball from in his jump shot, he is very tough to contest when he gets the ball at that 12 to 15 foot mark. It's similar to Kristaps Porzingis that we've seen in the NBA. When Kristaps catches the ball 15 feet, you basically have to hope he misses. Now, a 15-foot jump shot with someone on you, probably not the most efficient shot, but at the same time, Kai Sotto can get that off whenever he wants. He has a fairly quick release for his size. And with the way he releases the ball, almost nobody's going to be able to block that shot. So there is a little bit of face-up post game here that he can work with. I think that'll be a little wrinkle you can add into an offense. Now, I'm not saying Kai Sotto is going to be a go-to scorer averaging 20 points a game. I don't believe that. But what I do think is if you have him come off the bench, or if you need him to get some buckets with the bench unit, I think he could give you that to a certain extent. And that is a real positive for a player like Kai Sotto with his size, length, and then you add a little bit of skill set to that post-up game. It's a pretty good combination. Moving forward to another strength, and it's actually his downhill mobility. And this is part of one of the things I like about Kai Sotto. He actually runs the floor very well, which is something you don't typically see from someone who's 7'2" or taller. Think about the Boban Marjanović's, Sean Bradley's of the world. Of course, again, those guys are a little bit bigger, but they just don't run the floor very well. Sotto, on the other hand, does run the floor well downhill. So I think his downward mobility, where he's going straight forward, very, very good. He's actually a little bit more athletic than you would assume as well. There's going to be a clip in here where you see him catch a lob and finish with a reverse jam. I did not think he had that in his game. But then, watching more of him this year with the Adelaide 36ers, where he's got a little bit more of an opportunity to showcase his talent, he's impressed me at certain points with some of the things he's capable of doing. So I do think Kai Sotto, an interesting player when it comes to his downhill mobility, specifically, even when he has the ball in his hands. You've seen probably a few clips by now as well, where he puts the ball on the deck a little bit, gets to the rim, can finish through contact to a certain extent as well. So for me, Sotto is an intriguing player because of how well he can move toward the rim, specifically when he's going in a straight line. Another skill set of his that is very evident when you watch him is his stationary skill set. He's very good in certain situations when he catches and shoots. He's got a nice looking jump shot. I mean, shooting 33% from three in a pro league against pro players, that's difficult to do. I commended Chet Holmgren for shooting 39% from three in the college game. Gonzaga is not in the strongest conference either. So if I'm going to give Chet Holmgren a lot of credit for that, I have to be the same here with Kai Sotto and give him credit for that 33% mark in a pro league against pro players, because again, the athleticism is just going to be better. The players are going to be a little bit better. And it's going to be harder to execute. And Kai Sotto has been executing fairly well for the Adelaide 36ers in the minutes he's received. We've also seen an uptick in playtime for him. Had a 21-point performance against the Brisbane Bullets as well, which has been huge. So for him, it's very good to see that he is progressing and getting more trust from his coach over in the NBL for the Adelaide 36ers. I think that his skill set is pretty polished. Again, this goes back sort of to that post-up game as well, where he's able to face up and he's not putting the ball on the deck, but he's still talented. And there's times where he can put the ball on the deck and find success, but I think more so when he's stationary is when he's at his best using that skill set. You'll also see a play here where he's stationary at the top of the key, not really moving, but actually hits a really nice backdoor cut in a tight pocket. So he's got a little bit of passing upside to him as well. Not like he's going to be a great facilitator or playmaker, but it's not that he's going to be a massive net minus in that area either, which is a good thing to be if you're a 7'2" big, to not be a massive negative as a passer. That's usually a good thing. Then another strength of his, and I mean, look at his wingspan here again real quick. Just look at how long his arms are. I can hear Jay Billis now saying his arms go on for days. But the offensive baseline functionality for him, I think this is one of the bigger areas for me that I really do consider a strength, because if you're looking at adding a player like Kai Sotto, you're probably not looking for a mega superstar that's going to be a build around piece, but you're looking for a guy who probably is going to protect the rim for you and then plays off the ball at the NBA level. So for someone who off the ball, I think can have success, specifically working the baseline, you'll see clips where he starts in the corner, finds a nice cut opportunity off the corner, and finishes through contact at the rim. And then in another example, he can sit dunker spot. He's ready for lob opportunities. And that's part of that vertical athleticism I talked about. He's not going to be the most explosive guy, but if you give him space, he's going to be able to go up and get the ball and punch it home. So for me with him, I think that, he's going to work off the baseline a lot in his NBA career. I'm not sure how many minutes he's going to get a game throughout his NBA career. My guess is not a ton, especially early on. But when he's in the game, he does offer some functionality offensively. Just by putting him in certain positions, he knows how to play without the ball in his hands. And he's also a very good screener too. So if you want to use him in screen and roll opportunities, he has a very good understanding of tagging the guy he's screening, even if he doesn't hit an actual screen, and he slips out of there pretty quick. So that's one of the things I look at for Kai Sotto, being a really big positive for what he could be without the ball in his hands at the NBA level. Moving into the weaknesses, and I do think there are some serious legitimate concerns that limit his draft stock. And again, I think there's a lot of strengths to him, but also when you have a 7'2" player, you're going to have some weaknesses and trade-offs. That's just the reality of players this big and people with his type of frame and stature. First of all, the lateral mobility and defensive usage are two big concerns for me. I talked about his downward mobility downhill. I think he's very, very fluid moving toward the rim. One thing I have questions about though is how well does he deal with change of direction on the perimeter. I think his size and length is going to keep him competitive in plays. He's not going to be out of it because I think he can recover to the rim fairly well, but I think he's going to get blown by more often than some of the other top bigs in this year's class. And I think this is one of the biggest differences between him and Chet Holmgren. I think Holmgren moves laterally very well for his size, and I think Kai Sotto moves adequately laterally for his size, and that's a big difference there. Moving well compared to moving adequately, I think that's a massive difference to me. It's looking at the, Holmgren could probably hold his own out on the perimeter defensively in the NBA, whereas Sotto, I think a little bit less likely to be able to do that consistently. And you see that a lot this year with the Adelaide 36ers. Their head coach has really opted to use him as a drop defender pretty much in every pick and roll. And I understand why. And I'm not saying that this can't be successful. Again, with that size and length, he can be that, disruptor, and he's going to discourage a lot of shots around the rim simply by dropping him back, and his length and size is going to be able to get a little bit of a contest on the mid-range jump shots. But realistically, it does kind of handcuff your head coach into saying, okay, if you want to play Kai Sotto, you're probably going to have to play drop defense style. And we're seeing a lot of teams moving away from that into a more switchable NBA. You look at the, certain teams in the league, the Clippers, Heat, for example, are very switch heavy. And it's a big part of why they're good defensive teams. Kai Sotto probably can't play into that role as much. Now, I think he could fit a style very similar to what Chris Finch is doing in Minnesota in a blitz style defense, but that is very hard to continuously run over an 82-game stretch just because it does require a lot of energy and effort and also communication. But, Kai Sotto's length, if you do have him blitz the ball handler in a pick and roll, it's basically a trap there in the middle of the floor usually to force the ball out of his hands and have him recover back to the paint. It could be successful as well. I'm not saying he's going to be a terrible defensive player by any means, but I think you are limited in what you can do with him, because I do not think you want to go into a switch style defense with him on the floor. Maybe it's similar to what Philadelphia is going to been doing, where you look at a team that switches 1 through 4 and then you just don't have your 5-man switch. That does make some sense as well. You can still have him drop like Joel Embiid does. I'm not saying it's going to be a death sentence for a team. I'm just saying that I do think if you're looking from a head coach perspective, you probably would like to have a little bit more versatility in what you can do from a game-to-game, quarter-to-quarter basis. And I think Kai Sotto limits that versatility a little bit, but I still do think he can be solid and productive in those other roles that you'd ask him to play in, such as a drop defender in the pick and roll. Another one, another weakness here that I want to talk about is his fluidity in conjunction with that skill set. So I've talked about his fluidity a little bit, and I think he does have some pretty solid fluidity going downhill. But at the same time, I think that he's still a little bit of a ways away from piecing it all together and really becoming someone who can be as dynamic as a Chet Holmgren. And I know I keep bringing up Chet Holmgren. I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons between these two, because you look at a player like Sotto, who moves pretty decently and is just as big and lengthy as Chet Holmgren. People might be saying, why is Kai Sotto not in the same realm as Chet Holmgren? And there's some serious reasons why, and this is one of them. Chet Holmgren, much more natural when it comes to putting the ball on the deck, has a nice spin move off of that. Kai Sotto is developing in that area, and I'm not saying he'll never get there, but what I'm saying is right now he's a couple years away from being to the level where Chet Holmgren's currently at, and the two of them are the same age. So with Kai Sotto here, he's got to put it together a little bit more. You're going to see clips of him losing the basketball while trying to put it on the deck, and that's going to happen. It's not like every player's perfect and going to make every play all the time the right way. But Kai Sotto, I do think he has to tighten up his handle a little bit more if you want to actually use him for an outside perimeter scoring threat. And I also think that he's got to, tighten up his passing capability when on the move. I think that's one of the biggest concerns I have, is how well does he pass the basketball when he's putting the ball on the deck? Because right now I think that's a massive minus for him. And I talked about it earlier. I think he's a pretty solid passer when stationary, but I think the biggest concern for me is if he's actually on the move, I don't know how well he's going to pass the basketball. So for me, those are some areas that I think he has to improve. And, weaknesses can always be areas of improvement. It's not that this is going to be a permanent weakness for him. A lot of players do evolve and change over time. And I'm not doubting that Kai Sotto can really improve his game. It's just right now, with where he's currently at in my talent evaluation for him, he does need to grow in these areas for sure. And then another area that he needs to grow is just consistency with challenging with verticality. For a player as big and lengthy as him, you would think he'd be averaging 1 or 2 blocks a game, even in 15 minutes in the NBL. He's not. He's averaging a little bit over half a block a game. Still pretty substantial for the minutes he's playing. But I think one of the biggest issues is that he does a really good job challenging with verticality when there's a drive at him. But I think when he's actually faced with the post-up attempt, he doesn't do it as consistently. He's done it from time to time, but it also does, kind of fall into a habit of lowering his arms, creating contact with the offensive player, and he gets himself in foul trouble very frequently. He's averaging over 2.5 fouls a game in only 15 minutes of play. So if you're looking at someone, if you want him to be a 25-minute-a-game player for you at the NBA level, he's on pace to average about 6 fouls in that time. So for me, he's going to foul out a lot if he were to get substantial minutes. And that's partially why he doesn't see substantial minutes right now in the NBL with the Adelaide 36ers. And part of that too is just because he's young. A lot of young players, you typically don't see 25, 30 minutes a game over in the NBL. But for me with Kai Sotto, I think he has to become more consistent in this area. And again, this is a big separation point for Chet Holmgren. Holmgren challenges with verticality all the time. He's one of the best rim protectors in this draft. Kai Sotto, I think, has potential to become a really great rim protector, but I think he's a little bit further behind again in his development from where we currently see Chet Holmgren. The potential's there, and it's going to take a little bit to pull it out of him. I don't think it's going to be, okay, he comes in the NBA and starts figuring it out in year 1, but I think, year 2, year 3, year 4, maybe there's some serious long-term upside here that a team could find and, really uncover with him by developing him, probably spending some time in the G League, and then really, honing his craft and coming into the NBA down the road. I think he could be an impactful player. Another weakness, or player archetype, here for him, is a talented screener and rim protector. And what I'm saying by that here is I think that, he's got that talent to knock down a 3-point shot, work in the post-up game. But I think realistically, he's never going to be the focal point of an offense with those talents. I think it's going to be nice complementary aspects to his game. I think where he really finds a lot of success is a screen and roll guy who can catch lobs, very fluid that way when he's attacking downhill with or without the basketball. And I think he's a good rim protector. I think, you put him in and probably run a lot of zone defense. And I think that would work fairly well. His size and length does present a little bit of a challenge for other teams. So for me, with his archetype here, I think this one makes a lot of sense. A little bit wordier than most of my archetypes, but I think for a player like Sotto, who we don't typically see players like this, you have to be a little creative in what you're going to label him. So I think talented screener and rim protector. And I think that's a pretty good thing. I think every team in the league should be looking for rim protection and a guy who works in the pick and roll game. And for me, Sotto does both of those things. So I do think there is a future in the NBA for Kai Sotto. My draft range now, and I don't want you guys to get mad at me, but what I'm expecting for him is to be a very near end of the second round or undrafted free agent, which, you know, we've seen other players in the past do this, and they end up having great careers. Fred VanVleet's an all-star and NBA champion, and he did not get love on draft night. Kai Sotto might fall into the same pathway. Now, I'm not sure if he'll ever be an all-star, but I do think that he can be a productive player in the NBA, even if he doesn't get drafted, which I think is a serious possibility. So far in my mock drafts, I've not had him go in the first round once. And to be honest, in the second round mock I did as well, he did not get drafted. But where would I take him if I was a GM? I would really start considering him around pick 40 and after. Now, there's another prospect by the name of Jamarian Sharp that I think I would opt for over him, who offers some of the similar characteristics as him. Maybe not as polished offensively, but a little bit taller, a little bit lengthier. I think he's about 7'5" with a 7'8" wingspan, and actually moves his feet fairly well defensively. So for me, Jamarian Sharp would probably rank above Kai Sotto on my big board. But I do think there is some long-term potential here that you can uncover. And for me, if it's after pick 40, if you can find a guy that you'd want to give, hey, let's give him a two-way contract, or, you know, lock him up on a 3-year, like $5 million deal and let him sit in the G League and see if we got something with this, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think if you really work with him, focus a lot of development on him, he could end up being a very nice pickup for an NBA team. So that's what I would suggest for where I would take him. Again, this is kind of a loose ranking, not necessarily he's 40th on my big board or anything. But if I'm a team that, you know, is looking for some long-term potential, and I don't have a lot of other assets to try and improve my team, then I would take the risk. I really would. So I think that Kai Sotto could be a pretty valuable pickup for a team. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Also subscribe to the channel, turn on notification bell for more NBA draft coverage. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I know there's a lot of passionate Kai Sotto fans out there. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I did put a lot of time and effort into this recording. So again, I hope you really did enjoy. Give me your thoughts in the comment section. Request the next NBA draft prospect you'd like to see done, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.